hopefully we have many members online watching right now. We're trying to get a live stream up. The format for the evening is going to be pretty simple. We're going to start out the evening with a state of the co-op address given by our wonderful Greg Meredith here. We're going to show some financials as well from the latest drive, and then we're going to go into a time of voting. If you've not received an electronic version of voting, we have paper ballots in the back here. But if you do have one of those, I would encourage you to just use that electronic version. It's a lot easier to tally the results afterwards. But if not, then we'll go ahead and get those paper ballots.
Then we're going to post the results in the next coming days.
Be open until tomorrow evening, right around this time, about 6 o'clock p.m. So, yeah, we hit our wires crossed a little bit, but we're with the. And then after we do our formal voting, and there will be some discussion there too about each one of those voting topics, then we're also going to form the committees. There will be 3 committees, and these are not exactly voting processes. They're more or less consensus processes. So we have some people who have already volunteered. If there are any additional volunteers, then we're going to nominate a chair and then get some action items after that. So that's the rough agenda for the evening. Are there any questions before we get started? Okay. So without that further ado, Greg, please come on up and.
Hello, can you hear me? Awesome. So thanks to everyone for making this possible. I think we have just an amazing opportunity in front of us. I'm just going to make a few brief comments to introduce the meeting. I want to talk a little bit about the state of the chain. So if you wouldn't mind hitting the. So we want to first off just give a quick financial summary. When Lisa comes up, you'll hit escape, and then the second tab in the browser has a summary of the financial information. Then after we do the financial summary, we're going to do a bit of a technical summary. And then kind of look out over the roadmap just a bit, and then just do a quick review of the issues up for vote. Okay, so very, very simple, very brief. So Lisa, if you're up, here's our CFO and Treasurer, Lisa Rice.
I am going to present both the profit and loss statement and the balance sheet. And this really was the last summary I was going to present, and this is the yes. Okay, I'll talk about this and keep the show going. So this is a view of the crypto holdings for the co-op, and you'll see that there is a book value, and here I've shown the market value as of yesterday. So when you look at the books in a couple of minutes, when you look at the balance sheet, you'll see that we don't reflect the rocks at all because there's no basis according to a GAAP. And then the Bitcoin and Ether and amps we have are all recorded at the value we receive them at. And then as of yesterday, those were market values at about 5 o'clock. You can see that it's quite different from the book value. So this just gives you a sense of how many units we were holding as of about yesterday and how much liquidity could be available to the co-op during the next couple of months of the development. So if there's a P&L that I sent to you yesterday at about 6. Okay. Sure. Okay. All right. Well, so. Okay. So yeah, that's good. So this is the P&L year to date around, and really the area we're going to focus on mostly is on this gains from the sale of cryptocurrency, because that's really where all the activity for the co-op has been. So we've had two big liquidity events this year. The AMP redemption that was in April, and that brought in about 1.1 million in liquidity through taking in those AMPs. And then, of course, we just completed the sale of the private token and brought in, you know, almost $10 million in Bitcoin, Ether, and US dollars. Then I wanted to point out this other gains on sale of cryptocurrency, and that's a couple of different things. So as we've sold off AMPs, the price of those AMPs went up from where we had acquired them, and that resulted in gains. And also when we pay people in rocks, that creates a gain on the income statement. So if we pay someone, let's say, $1,000 for work, because the rock has no basis, it shows up as a gain there, and then the work that they perform shows up under expenses. So from a P&L standpoint, there's no impact. You know, you have a gain and an expense that offsets to zero. But as you look at that $1.6 million, you are capturing some of that compensation being paid out. So that's, you know, the real activity that's gone on from a revenue standpoint. Expenses, the buckets are R&D, marketing, general and administrative. We've had, and we'll continue to have some, you know, sizable legal expenses because everything in the crypto space is new. And that includes, you know, from the formation of the co-op to the AMP redemption process and the private sale. And we also had other expenses related to both of those items down under private sales and expenses as we brought in outside experts to help us, you know, successfully get through those projects. And then the last item I'm going to point out is this potential federal income tax expense of $4 million. So the co-op has engaged an outside accountant to help us understand what our tax obligations are around the private sale and the redemption process. The $4 million here is the worst case scenario if we had to really pay taxes this year on that as if it's all income at 35%. So we're hoping for a different outcome. We're actively engaged in trying to find it. But in terms of, again, just giving you the worst that could happen, that is where that $4 million is coming from. And that brings us down to a bottom line, $7.3 million in net income, or really I like to look at that as really the cash that the co-op has available, even if we had an adverse outcome in terms of what we owed for taxes. We have $7.3 million in liquidity, before you talk about, you know, changing market values, to really build out that platform for the next year. So that's, to me, that is just an outstanding position for the co-op to be in at this point. So. Yeah, really, it's all the work done by the people in sale. Yeah, is that? Okay, is this better? Okay. All right, gotcha. Okay. Yes, I am. Thanks. Okay, so here's the balance sheet. It's pretty simple. We've got some cash in the bank, and then we've got these crypto assets, AMP, Bitcoin, and Ether, as I mentioned, because the rocks, from an accounting standpoint, don't have a basis. You don't really see them on the balance sheet. And then the other big part of the asset is the note receivable that we have from RChain Holdings related to the agreement that Holdings and the co-op entered into in April around the sale of the 105 million rocks. So if you want to scroll down, so on the liability side, the liabilities are pretty normal, accounts payable, some accrued payroll. The deferred revenue is just sitting there waiting for payments to come in from Holdings under that note. So until we receive cash or rock, some type of consideration, that will sit there, and then as we receive consideration, we will bring it into revenue, and that deferred item will go down. So I don't really look at it like a real liability of the co-op. It's just from an accounting standpoint, there's no other place to put it but to hang it there. So, and then we've got the federal income tax payable, and that relates to that expense that I just spoke about. So when you really look at the liabilities, there aren't really a lot of liabilities other than normal operating ones related to the lag between people doing work and us getting their payments off to them. And then the equity, 7.3 million. Not too many startups have that type of equity to kick off with. So I think, again, that's just a great place for us to be. And that really is it. And if you want to go, we can open this back up. And there's, again, the look of the crypto assets we have. So we have 692 million rocks. We have Bitcoin, 729 Bitcoin, 24,117 Ether, and the amps about 4.6 million. So anyway, are there any questions about the financials, or if you ever have a question, please just ping me. Yes, Danny? The payroll period is, so for the contractors, that's not technically payroll, but we pay everybody once a month, so we ask them to submit their invoices in at the start. Yes, yep, yep.
But it's important to understand that there's no system that currently they allow us to run this like normal, like payroll you've seen in corporate office. Because every contractor has their own mix of different kinds of currency that they want, and there are options within those contracts, right? So we can't just like press a button and run payroll. It doesn't work that way. For each contract, we have to go, okay, they want amps. Oh, they want Bitcoin and cash. Oh, they want rocks and Bitcoin. But your figures in USD?
Yeah, all these figures, yes, are in USD, and when we pay people, we look at the current value of the Bitcoin and pay it according to that. Yeah, Kenny? That's the cash. I think it, was it 525,000. So, yep.
Any plan to convert your crypto holdings maybe on a sliding scale over time into USD, or are you going to strictly hold crypto over time looking for appreciation?
There's a board resolution on this that you need to look at and get that talks about how we are distributing our assets.
So right now, that's on hold until it's decided on hold.
Right. We're following guidance of the board at this point, unless the membership believes that the board should do something different.
I mean, this is a little bit the challenge of being in the crypto space, in that it is not actually easy to go from crypto into fiat. There's restrictions on how much you can sell on the exchanges. Just trying to get these exchanges to respond to you is challenging. But we are on it so that we'll have the flexibility to get where we need to be and where the board decides to set things. Yeah, Jacob. No, other than to say that I truly believe that $4 million amount would be the worst outcome. I mean, it just shouldn't be worse than that. But whether or not. Yeah, I didn't mean to imply that, sorry. Yeah, Ben?
So we're not, I mean, the business aspect of it is not capped at 25% cap gains, being that it's considered a stock from a tax perspective?
know, there just isn't really any guidance, which is really why we've reached out to an accounting firm. So all we know is that, you know, the IRS has said that, you know, it's a kind of property to it. But that's just really one aspect. There's the whole nature of the transaction. So, you know, as Greg was just mentioning, there are a lot of different ways to look at it, and we need some experts really to, you know, help us create some paths and come with a good outcome. Yeah, Nash.
The number you're showing is basically the worst case scenario, right? So at the end of the day, it's not going to get any worse than $4 million, which is a great scenario for us to be able to still need 7 in the industry, right?
Yeah, that would be, yes, that's what I consider the worst case scenario, but, you know,
Narrowly is better.
yeah. Yeah.
We're also talking to a former partner, friend of ours at EY.
Oh, good.
He's taking a look at this, and there are absolutely strategies that we're going to be digging deeper into to reduce that to 0 when we get there. Remember, this is outside, not security. Just act like it, you know, treat it like it, and you get treated entirely different area. We've got a number of strategies to preserve as much of that dollar value as possible.
And it's kind of important, right? Because, you know, if we are lean, really lean, we can get directly on that number. But we don't have to be running on fumes, you know, in the fourth quarter of 2018 to push it, you know, into release, right? So that's just not the scenario we want. So we're trying to reduce the tax numbers as quickly as I can.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
So you think you're gonna raise some more money, in the coming months?
You know,
What do you
the
feel like?
private sale window is closed, except for there are a few parties that we, as a board, we made the decision. There were some large parties with very big interests who were in the midst of their due diligence process, and we've given them a grace period to complete their due diligence process. But at this point, you know, if they don't complete the next week or so, we have to say, sorry, we gotta close the sale. So that could make a big difference, but I can't really talk more about it until they've done the due diligence.
All right, yeah, thanks.
When I was preparing these slides, I was really struck by the kind of odd balance. When you go Google images on Mercury, right, you get this really nice space age versus antiquities kind of imagery, right? So there was the Mercury, the NASA Mercury program, and then there's these Roman coins with the god of Mercury on them. So I was really struck by that, because I think we're really spanning something that crosses that kind of scale. For the Mercury release, we have one single goal, and it's really easy to articulate, and anybody in this room can understand it, right? So we want to be able to instantiate wallet contracts and token contracts and have those run over hundreds of nodes. That's simple, okay? So we'll talk about what goes into that, but that's easy for everyone to understand. That's what we're aiming for. That's what we're going to get to in Q4 of 2018. So tokens plus wallets over hundreds of nodes. Easy to write down even. All right, so if we could go to the, so the question is, where are we with respect to that? And it's great to have Chris here. He can talk a little bit more about the comms layer and tell us about what's going on there. It's great to have, has Nash got back from his break? There you are, okay. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. I heard you ask that. Okay, so if you could hit to the next slide. So I just want to remind everyone, in order to get to that goal, what's the stack that's required, and what's the stack that effectively we're betting on in terms of getting there. So at the bottom, we're sitting inside a JVM. That's the container. And sitting right above that JVM container, we have the row Scala compiler, the storage layer, and a comms layer. Okay? And then Rolang sits above that and has access to all of those. All right? And then, so at this level right now, we have something running. So you can go to the GitHub and you can look at Kent's ERC20-like token contracts, but they're not the kind of token contracts that are taking advantage of the blockchain infrastructure. That's going to happen up here after we have Casper implemented inside Rolang. Okay? So, but that still gives you a sense of what the programming model is going to be like and what the execution is like. So you can already do that today. Now, in addition, we've had some amazing work happening on the comms layer and the storage layer. So, yeah, you want to talk a little bit about the comms layer? I mean, you know, if anything's going wrong with comms, it's him. No, but so you've been doing the Kademlia work now, right? So you've been doing node discovery.
Kademlia work is done. There is work set together with more RChain specific stuff. There's no namespacing or anything like that.
Yeah, understood. Yeah.
All of the stuff that sets us apart hasn't been done yet.
Yeah.
But as far as I can tell you, the comms layer has peer-to-peer mesh networking done.
Very good. See, this is. So effectively, this was pre-funding, right? So I want that to sink in for a minute. We've done a similar job with the storage layer. I wish that Griff were here to talk a little bit about that. But what you can do is you can go back to all the YouTube videos and you can see the excellent demo that Chris gave, and you can see the excellent demo that Griff gave to get a sense of where the storage and comms are. Excellent. This is what I like to hear. This is really cool. The numbers from the storage are very good. I don't like to talk about them too much right now, but they're excellent. Now, the reason I don't want to talk about them too much is because there's still sort of some pipe fitting that's going to go on between the core model that we've got underneath and the key value, the Prolog-based key value model that we've got as the API. So there's a little bit of pipe fitting, and that's going to introduce, in certain circumstances, going to introduce some slowdown. But when you simplify the model down to flat keys, it will be extremely fast. I'm not going to say the numbers just yet. I can't wait to share them with you, though. Okay, so that's good. Now, the other part that you saw last week, if you were watching the video, is the Scala re-implementation of the Rosette VM just took its first breath. So we have basically the container now, and we're able to execute 4 of the 20-odd opcodes that we've got to for the basic virtual machine. So you can play around with that, and you can also please continue to play with the C++ implementation. So that will give you a feel for the underlying execution model. And then Rolang, well, we've made some huge progress on Rolang, and the progress is not just in terms of development or in terms of features, but also in terms of how we're splitting things up. Let me give you an example of the kind of thing that we're talking about here. It's pretty clear. Maybe we can join the game. This is awesome. It's pretty clear that at some point it's going to be useful to have a sub-language a little mini DSL inside Rolang that is effectively a restricted functional language. Now, from long experience, I've discovered that if you give people tools that they're already familiar with, alongside of stuff that they really need to learn, they will just never go and touch the stuff they need to learn. If you're a parent, you know this a lot. So you can't put the chocolate chip cookies out before dinner, right? That's so Rolang is going to go out in Mercury very impoverished in terms of a feature set to get people thinking in terms of this protocol-oriented programming. And then over time, we're going to introduce things like this, the little mini functional DSL to ease with some programming tasks. One thing that I do want to mention, though, is if you sit down and you compare the Solidity ERC20 contract against the contract that Kent wrote, they're roughly the same line count. So already just the bare bones minimal Rolang programming language is quite expressive, right? You can say anything you want in roughly the same amount of lines of code. It's just that it's running in parallel for lots and lots of execution paths. Sorry? And you can prove it works. That's the other thing. Okay, so that gives you a sense. Now, the other thing, part of the reason that we were a little bit late was Vlad and I spent some good fun time today chatting over the status of Casper. Vlad has some very nice construction that I was going over this afternoon with him on Casper. So the work on Casper is accelerating, and I'm extremely excited that we will have a correct by construction Casper in the very near future. Looking forward to that. So very excited about that. And so essentially we've funded Danny Ryan to go and help Vlad clean up the existing simulations and documentation. And then we're going to be, and then in the next phase of that work, we'll port that over to Rolang. And that's one of the sort of principles of dog fooding, right? We're just going to keep putting pressure on the platform, right? So the first thing we do is we write Casper and Rolang, right? And the advantage of that, I probably most people in this room have heard me say this a bazillion times, but the advantage is that when it type checks, it will then be proven correct, just as Nash said. So this rather than have to go out to Isabel or Hall or any of these other formal methods, mechanisms, it'll be right in the platform, and that's important for us. So that's kind of gives you up through Casper, and then the wallet and token contracts will then execute against a version of Rolang that has ports that are smart about blockchain. So if you begin to learn the programming constructs in Rolang, you'll realize that there are only two things in the world. There are channels or ports, sometimes they're called, we also call them names, and there are processes that communicate using those channels. So when as we grow the technology base, we're going to want to touch a lot of other technologies. So what's the core abstraction to touching those other technologies? Well, these are the channels, right? So you can think of a web service as sitting behind a channel, or you can think of a database as sitting behind a channel. That's the core abstraction, and in fact, that's how the namespace abstraction works for us. When we grow new namespaces, right? What we're growing is the different kinds of channels that the platform can handle. All right, so when so there's essentially two different kinds of Rolang, right? There's a core Rolang down here, which doesn't know about blockchain stuff. It's just a general purpose programming language. And then we put Casper on top of that, and now there's a new kind of set of ports that are Casper enabled, right? Or in other words, they're ports that are backed by the blockchain, right? And that's how we can then write the wallet and the token contracts. So hopefully that gives people a sense of how the pieces fit together. Yes. Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks. It's okay. Can I hit the next slide? So I want to make sure that people understand a little bit more of the big picture, and especially when we get to sort of membership and governance issues. So from a technical perspective, when we talk about the roadmap, you know, we're looking at Mercury is on the coming horizon, and then there's the Venus release, and then the Earth or Terran release, and then the Mars release. So those are the planned releases, and we have rough ideas of how the feature sets are carved out here. So we've talked about what goes in the Mercury release. In the Venus release, essentially what we'll be doing is expanding the feature set of Rolang. And we're going to expand the scale that this runs over. So we want to be running this over thousands of nodes with a much expanded surface area for Rolang. That's the core thrust of Venus, unless the membership directs us otherwise, right? And then with respect to the Terran release, we want to be able to hit self-hosted. And this is going to be important. And the reason it's going to be important is we don't want to be dependent necessarily on the JVM. We'd like to be able to have our own model, our own VM. So we write RChain in RChain, which allows us to then host on mobile platforms and a bunch of other kinds of platforms. You know, it'd be cool to have RChain in a toaster. I'd like that. I'm sorry, but the darker costs you a few more rocks, or rev. And then from that point on, so getting to Mars is really where we began to focus on supporting a very rich ecosystem of applications, and that's where I hope that Holdings is, yes. And then the other thing that's on the horizon, and I really hope people understand this, is that we're talking about platform commoditization. So from Jupiter out, the platform, getting a platform like this will be press a button, right? So literally you can press a button and mint your own decentralized distributed, you know, programming model, and it will just work at scale. So the platform part of this is no longer valuable. It's all about the network effects, and it's all about the application ecosystem, and it's all about the community. And that's what, so if we could go to the next slide. So the first thing I want to draw our attention to as a community is, you know, right now we're at, RChain has what, over 300 members, something like that. What does an RChain look like at 1,000 members? What does an RChain look like at 100,000 members? What does an RChain look like at 1 million members? And what are the governance models that are going to support that kind of infrastructure? Right, we really have to start thinking about this now, right? When I remember I was so impressed, I sat with Robin Milner, the guy who invented the pi calculus, and I got to tell this story. It's a wonderful story. So we were talking a little bit about just notation, mathematical notation, and he said to me that he had given his manuscript for his first book, Communication and Concurrency, which was all about the CCS, to David Walker and David Park, and David Park had suggested this massive notational change. And so, you know, basically going from Greek to Latin notation in several major sections. And Robin took the criticism to heart and rewrote the manuscript. And basically what he said was, you know, good beginnings turn into good middles, and good middles turn into good ends. And I have always taken that to heart. So now we need a good beginning. We need a good beginning when we think about how we govern ourselves. So that's sort of what I'm thinking. And one of the ways that I'm thinking about this is in terms of accessing the collective intelligence at some of these higher levels of applications. And in particular, what's near and dear to my heart is that we can access that when we play. So we've all heard the term gamification. That's a real that's a thing these days. But some gamification is actually addictive, and some gamification is illuminating. I think we know what it's like to you know, find ourselves addicted to some kind of online behavior, right? I've been describing this for a long time, and I want to keep iterating this story because I think it says a lot about what we can do together. When I was learning the West African drumming, I was really struck by how the complexity of the music was not in any one part. You didn't have to have virtuosic skill at the African drums in order to have a very, very satisfying musical experience, because the complexity arose from the way the parts fit together, right? The village idiot could play, any village idiot like myself could play any one of those parts. And so the satisfying part of the music, the harmonizing part of the music, was in the way things fit together. Now, I thought, how could I do that online? How could I make something like that online? And I'm sure many people have heard me tell this story of, well, imagine just you have a grid, a square grid, and everyone signs up for 1 pixel, right? And all they can do is turn that 1 pixel a color of their choice or message the other players in the game. Now, when I described this to one developer in 2010, he was so excited. He had an implementation where Twitter was the messaging system, and there was a web page you could go to see the results. In less than 3 hours, the developer was Latino, and so most of his friends and community were Latino. In less than 3 hours, they drew the Mexican flag. Nobody was in charge. No, there was no guiding central intelligence, right? All anyone could do was change 1 square on this grid to a particular color, and yet through communication, they were able to have this happen. And this is the kind of gamification I'm talking about, and I think it's the kind of work that we're going to have to do in our governance models to make RChain work at 1 million members or more. Right, and that's what I'm hoping we can get to. So if we could move on then. This is just a placeholder for me for the talk I'm going to be giving in New York. I like this idea of social chladni patterns. I don't know if anyone knows what a chladni. Do people know what a chladni patterns are? Okay, we got two people in the room. So let me describe this. So if you take sand and you put it over a plate that you can vibrate, and then you pass a tone or a musical tone through the plate, then the sand forms into these different patterns that have to do with how the plate itself is vibrating, right? And music instrument makers use this in order, like if they're carving the bowl of a violin or making the back of a guitar, they'll do this with the instrument they're carving in order to make sure they've got an interesting timbre or the right kind of timbre. Now imagine that it's these kinds of higher level vibrational patterns that we have to occupy to govern ourselves. That's what I think we need to get to. So anyway, just a placeholder, just a thought. I just want to plunk it down in there and see how it lands. If we could move on then. So now on to the meat of the substance of the meeting. So we have issues up for vote. You've probably all seen them. I just want to make sure that everyone is aware and that we can have good discussion. The election of directors. Hopefully everyone's seen the list of directors who are up for vote. There's the proposal to set the ROC circulation. There's the proposal for the sale of token to non-members. There's the proposal to lock up ROC tokens. There's a proposal for a conversion process of ROC to Rev. There's a proposal for airdropping some tokens and a time limit on or a proposal for time limit on multiple staking tokens. And I think that covers everything, unless I have missed something. So that's what's on the ballot for today. If there's any clarification, I guess, now we throw it out to the membership to have general discussion and talk over any of these issues. Yeah. I can serve in that role. Oh, Kenny, I'll let you take.
Okay, so just quick show, how many people have already filled out their ballots? Okay, so, and who hasn't? Okay, so of those who haven't, have you not received an email correspondence with that Survey Monkey? Is there anybody who has not received the digital form? Okay, that's good. Because we had quite a few people online that weren't able to get it. So that's the preferred method for voting, because it's a lot easier to tally the results. If anybody would like a paper ballot here and now, please let us know, and then Evan can pass that out. Paper ballot? Okay, so I think I can do this from, actually, Evan, if you give me one of those ballots, I can kind of walk through the ballot. Yeah, Ed.
Can you describe the deadline for voting? It looks like they're setting up to complete here.
No, I'm not. Yeah, so the question here was, can explain when the deadline for voting is? Deadline for voting is tomorrow at 6 p.m. Pacific time. So there is still time. Just wanted to run through this on the record for anybody watching at home and anybody who is yet to fill out the ballot, because I have not yet filled out my ballot either. So I just want to, and then we can have some discussions here. So for the directors, I'll just read off the names of the directors. And to clarify, Evan, there are 3 term levels, right? So there's 3-year term, a 2-year term, and a 1-year term, right? And then we have 9 members up for board seats. So is it 3, 3, and 3? Is that how it's going? Yeah, he's coming up to the mic.
Okay, so the way that the election of the directors is going to work is there's 3 staggered terms. The longest is for 3 years. The way that the election of directors is going to work is there's 3 staggered terms. The longest is 3 years, and then 2 years, and then 1 year. So the people who get the most support on the ballot will get the longest terms, and the people who get the least support on the ballot get the shortest term, and will be up for election at the next member of this meeting next year. And at that meeting, we expect it'll be, I mean, it's difficult to speculate at this point, but 6 candidates, 3 seats. Some people aren't going to make the cut. But as of right now, not a lot of people expressed an interest in becoming a director, and so we have 9 candidates and 9 seats.
So you'll also be stack ranking these. So the 1 will be the highest level term, or the longest term, and then you just stack rank them after that, and then we'll run those through. What is it called? The method that we're using? I always forget the name. Concord method? Yeah. So essentially, it's not a majority. We'll have clear outcomes for each director after the voting is taking place. So the names, we have Greg, Evan Jensen, Ian Bloom, Alexander Bulkin, myself, Kenny Rowe, Vlad Zamfir, David Curran, Navneet Suman, and HJ, or Hendrik. Those are the names of the directors. All right, so the second item up for a vote for the proposal to set ROC circulation for 2018. The items listed here is the cooperative shall sell from the Treasury to put no more than 200 million ROC tokens in circulations, tokens held by anyone other than held by the cooperative or burned during the next calendar year. And then the other options are just iterations on the number, so either 200 million, 300 million, 500 million, or 750 million. Is there any questions about this, Ed? And I'll repeat for the folks at home. What does sell mean? And the question was if the co-op compensates a developer, is that selling?
Circulation means any token that's held by anybody other than the cooperative or burned.
So circulation means any token not held by the cooperative or burned.
It says on the ballot, the definition of circulation is it's not in the co-op's treasury and it's not burned. Everything else counts toward that gap.
Okay, Jacob.
So if we choose to implement the first proposal option, 200 million total would mean we can't give developers coins if we run up against that, which means if we sell out the private sale, that's 75 million, Hogan's has 105, and there's already another 20 out there. So it seems like we're handicapping ourselves. Is that correct? Well, yeah, that would be the limited complete circulation for the first option would be 200 million, correct? That's correct.
It would be fairly limiting. Yeah, that first option.
We had that math, so we understand how limiting that would be. Because it's this first option, and I don't know how. But it's tricky and it's very hard to do that, right? Because, today the rock is one price, tomorrow the rock is another price. And so, let's say, and we need to be fully, cognizant that in the middle of this process, things may be tough, things may be difficult, and so people want to be paid a dollar or we get right? Other times they're really, really, bullish about rocks and to be paid all in rocks. So this is very, very difficult. I think it is also worth pointing out that this is new calendar year 2018, and the members in the next round meeting change the numbers to something else. And if before then, members want to do a special meeting, introduce the numbers.
Yeah, so that's a good point. I'll repeat that for the microphone. This is for 2018, which is roughly like 8 weeks left, right? And then anything can be changed with a special meeting, though there is a quorum required for a special meeting. Oh, sorry, 18 is yeah, that's a year in 8 weeks. Yes, in roughly 8 weeks it starts.
So, I mean, if it's going to be an ICO, that kind of happened in 2018. It's most likely going to happen in 2019, right? Is that what you're thinking? Yes, that's a whole other can of worms. Right, so this is not going to play that. But I'm saying, will this kind of play into this? Right? Will this have an effect on some of that? They're linked in the sense that if, for example, the bulk of the workforce decides to pay, wants to be paid in rock, and a large investor approaches the club and says, "We'd like to buy this much rock," then we bump up against the limit that would then impact our ability to deliver relative to that ICO. But they're separate items.
Okay. Ed?
So Kenny, is your interpretation, Evan, is your interpretation that this is, for example, the first one, 200 million additional rocks into circulation or total rocks into circulation?
Total.
So there's approximately 200 million total rocks in circulation now by my interpretation already. So this would essentially mean no more rocks can be sold. That's my interpretation of this first option.
Is that correct? That's correct, yes.
Yeah.
Very tight to 200 million. That's quite close to the amount that is currently held by people other than the club. That's basically locking the rocks up.
Yeah. That first option would be locking everything up.
I don't know the exact numbers. I put them on Discord a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Right, so then that would mean the second option at 300 million rocks.
Would roughly give us 100 million.
An additional 100 million.
Yes.
Which is maybe something like, let me think about that, an additional 10% of the rocks sold or compensation when we go out, when we hear the interpretation. Sorry? Well, that was related to my
Yes, not held by the cooperative burned.
So just at the end of 2018, right, or the next, does this resolution expire so they all become open to be sold, or does it have to be another vote for it to change in the next meeting? Well, presumably there would be another item up for a vote, very similar to this one, depending on what the membership wanted to do.
Okay. All right. So item 2, sale of rock to non-members. This is pretty self-explanatory. The cooperative shall sell tokens to non-members or not. Yeah?
When would this take effect immediately? So this is authorizing the cooperation, not a command that it will. Whether or not the members want to place a prohibition, say you shall not sell to any non-member, or members say it is acceptable to sell to non-members.
Yeah. So we'll say the authorization is effective immediately. Or not.
Those are being sold by people other than the cooperative. Yeah, in other words, the membership currently and/or contractors who came in before everything had rock and are now trading it out.
Right. So this would mean the cooperative could not openly trade on a. Yeah. Yeah, it depends on terms of sale.
I also would not assume there isn't prohibited legal advice.
Yes. On every, actually, I think almost on every question, that is a proviso that assuming legal advice. Yeah, the cooperative should not ever. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. So item 4, proposal for conversion process for the rocks and to Rev. So this one is at the planned launch of the RChain platform, the conversion should be automatic at a specific block height or timestamp to send Rev tokens to all rock token holders at a particular point in time. Or the planned launch for the RChain platform, a smart contract should be deployed where a user must explicitly send rock to a smart contract address where they will be burned and an equal number of Rev tokens will be supplied. And the final option is, at the planned launch of the RChain platform, some other procedure should be used for Rev conversion, or this should be decided later. Oh, did I skip one of the items? Item 4 or option 4? Okay. Yeah, it's just, I'm sorry, I'm reading off of here. Yeah, and this, it just might be out of. Yeah, okay. Are there any questions about that kind of process? So actually going back to, so this, I didn't read the lockup part, so. Yeah, so let's go back to lockup, because I just skipped that, sorry. Proposal to lock up ROC tokens until the platform launches. The cooperative should use a smart contract to lock up mechanism where for tokens which should not be sold in 2018, during the year 2018, of an amount of tokens to be determined later. The cooperative should burn some quantity of tokens, permanently destroying them of an amount of tokens to be determined later. The cooperative should keep ROC tokens in a treasury and not sell them unless directed by the members to do so, of all the tokens not approved for circulation. So what was the question, Evney? So the question basically is if there's a contradiction, or not necessarily a contradiction, if one prior proposal affects another. Yeah. Yeah, that is a problem. Yes. Since everything is also said to be determined later, so it could be determined to be 0. What was that? Oh, not necessarily contradict. One proposal would affect another proposal. So if we limited the number of total in circulation, that would have an effect on locking. Or vice versa. If they're all supposed to be locked and you can create some, then they're locked, which might have different intent. Okay? So then going back to the conversion process, was there any questions about the two basic? Yeah, so Chris. Yeah. Hmm? I don't know how that would work. Yeah, it is possible that it couldn't work. Correct, yeah. The standard model that I've seen is definitely B for conversion. It's explicit, the contract is created, and an action has to be taken in order to convert. So that's definitely B there would be the... Yeah, I agree, yeah. Okay. Yeah, airdrop. Last time I checked on the digital ones, that is neck and neck. It's 50-50 on that one. So the airdrop is approximately, with the launch of our RChain platform, a small specific amount of REV tokens should be airdropped using a procedure or method to be determined later. Or there should not be an airdrop. Ed.
Yeah, so I wanted to explain the rationale for this.
You want to use them? Sure.
It may not be very obvious what the purpose or intent behind this one. I was proposing this, and I don't think we need to decide this immediately, by the way. We have some time. But the concept is we need adoption on RChain as it's launched. And one way to get adoption is to get revs in the hands of people that we think are going to use it. So the Ethereum community in particular, because they are building smart contracts on Ethereum, would be a very interesting audience to airdrop to, right? And so we could look at the Ether holdings, provide some revs to those that hold Ether, and we could even cap in various ways and we could decide later how much revs get dropped. But the idea of whether it be to existing Ether holders or to others that would accelerate community adoption from a consumer or from a public perspective was the idea behind the airdrop. So that's just wanted to talk a little bit about why.
Any other questions on the airdrop? Sure. Yeah, come on up.
I don't really have much to say. I didn't really prepare to say anything, but I don't think that giving free tokens away, even to people who are somehow close to our community, like Ethereum is to RChain, is a way to promote the value of it's expensive marketing if we value our coins. And if people are so close to RChain anyway, from the Ethereum side, well, they should be close because of our strong ties and our value proposition. I don't think giving even just 5% of total coins, which could be a large value, away to a distributed network is a wise use of resources. That's my opinion.
Do we know the effect of the MISA Go airdrop yet? Does anybody know? I don't know.
Yeah, so the question was, do we know the effect of the MISA Go airdrop? I know I've not done anything with those myself. They just showed up. It got my attention at one point in time. This is only my perspective, but so use them to subsidize like a promotional period, something like that. Yeah, we could do. I'm sure there are other marketing things we could try that are kind of like an airdrop that could be interesting. Christian.
Yeah, I guess maybe set up a third entity, like a nonprofit, that's the RChain nonprofit, where they go out and, I don't know, instead of dropping $2 million worth of rocks to the community, it's a very specific goal, like $2 million in cancer research or something like that. Like,
Yeah, you could.
third entity, a co-op, you have a for-profit entity, there's the holdings, and you have this third entity, a nonprofit, that oversees the use of, well, still be community-driven programs, like, I don't know, eventually homeless shelters or something like that.
Yeah, or a bounty program.
Or grants or something, we're not the government, but it's something to think about.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
What's the long-term goals? I think the way that I work for a cooperative, but I think the way that the community operates is generationally, what's going to achieve the goal longer term, but it forces you to define what you want to be when you grow up. And so when we do the community, I mean, is the longer term goal just the platform, so it's it's a service or the product of the platform at the end, and then people can build on it? Because then I think we have a different target market in
All right. So the last item up for voting were proposals for time limit on multiple staking tokens. So the cooperative should not allow the creation of more than one staking token for the period of 6 months after the launch of RChain. Or the cooperative should not allow the creation of more than one staking token, the REV, by the way, for the some period after the launch of RChain platform of some other duration to be determined later. The final option was the cooperative should allow the creation of more than one staking token at the launch of the RChain platform. This is for validators.
The weird conversion business at the end of staking time, right? I mean, at this point, if we only launch with red, you can still stake with the Ethereum. You just get rid of that because you transfer Ethereum to red and you stake and whatnot. So I mean, this is really a procedural thing. No, not really.
Everything is going into red. What happens on the fringes is entirely separate. But imagine that you want to, one potential here is that you'd like to avoid order. And you want to lower the cost of the use of the platform. So where people would much rather just use the platform, they could install their own staking.
Folks who are already invested in Ethereum can go ahead and stake on RChain.
Yeah, exactly. If they have a large position, they can just move it over to red and have a similar position. But someone who's not in that process at all, one thing they could do potentially is create a new staking token, and now you enfranchise as opposed to disenfranchise an entirely new community.
It's the new staking token that I guess has fuzzy.
Yeah, it'd be new, potentially.
I get Bitcoin, I get new staking token.
Native to RChain. Yeah, all these tokens would have to be native, I believe, right?
Yeah, so if we have our own ERC coin business, then doing one of those for staking.
Yeah, but ERC20 it's not a staking coin. It's never going to be a staking.
Work with me here, Greg.
What's that?
Work with me.
Okay, I'm
Yeah, so something like that, right? I don't know what a new staking token would be if it's not an existing cryptocurrency.
Well, I mean, the purpose would be to be able to, we haven't thought about the distribution problem. And the distribution problem is hard. Right? So having additional staking tokens allows us some latitude with respect to distribution. So people don't, so we don't end up in a situation where there's the haves and the have-nots.
So it's just existing crypto tokens, right? So not new staking tokens.
No.
I was getting two different messages from the three different sources on that one.
I'm not sure I understand then. I thought they were native. Sure. Are you looking for the survey? Yeah. Here we go.
Yeah, so this is not, the staking tokens here in this proposal are not just limited to other existing crypto.
Nash, in the back.
Something to contemplate here, right? If you vote for an option that takes flexibility off the table, and the board has limited that flexibility for the board for the duration of its decision, right? So they don't have to issue multiple stapler tokens if you give them the option to do so. The board is the largest rock holder of all of us, right? So chances that they're going to do something that's it's not in the best interest of rock holders is very low. Take options off the table for them, and those are things that they cannot possibly do. If you leave the maximum number of options on the table, then those are things that they can do if the situation, comes into play. This is going to be the best thing for all the rock holders in general, right? So all things being equal, you might consider that there's a privileged position for the votes that leave options on the table for the board.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. The same is true with respect to other kinds of implementations like burning. Again, think about it this way, is the total volume of thread going to be equal to the volume of dollars in circulation in California? No. Not by a long stretch, right? And so what that means is that either at some point the co-op is going to have to mint a bunch more tokens, or we're constantly in this process of either patching the arithmetic or dealing with arithmetic overflow issues all the time. Because all the transactions are way to the right of the decimal point, right? So it's just like, it's very short-sighted to think about that, without really looking at what it means in terms of nuts and bolts operation.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about this, and Nash's point about not handcuffing or limiting the board seems intuitively right. But I think maybe what we should be thinking about is putting a committee together to study token economics in order to better inform the decision. I don't get the feeling any of us in our position, even the entire market, can make a decision that would have this much bearing on token economics right now. So perhaps we should study. Since we've got a bunch of people who are really good at math. I'm not talking about myself. Perhaps we should model token economics, or at least take a stab at it, to better understand what it is we're even considering.
You do not have to vote. Nothing is required. Not that I know.
Well, I think the third option gives them the option to do it or not.
But not propose it out here on the table, right? You can't change the board. Well, no, because at any point, right, the membership can call a special meeting, the chief of board and say, no, we're taking this off the table. Sorry, Albert.
Yeah, that would be the process.
I'll tell you now, right? There's no way we're going to have all these staking tokens up Berkeley. So you got at least until Berkeley to figure this out.
Right, which is my point. Should we be voting on this now?
Yeah, well,
So, maybe I'll answer that question. This shouldn't be part of this proposal at all. Because we don't have the right data from
What was that?
For the co-op, can I move the table with particular
Yeah, that would definitely be an Evan call on that one.
that's very
Yeah, absolutely. Or a special meeting. Yeah. No, there are no, yeah. Okay. All right. So the last thing before we conclude is just the committees. So we have 3 potential committees, an executive committee, a compensation committee, and a nominating committee. We have 14 volunteers, of which a various mixture have either volunteered for all 3 committees, 1 committee, or 2 committees. And these committees are by volunteer. So what we would like to decide today is the chairs for those committees. And we have some proposed heads of those committees. And then from there, the committees will be self-governing. So they will choose how their members will be chosen, and as well as their deliverables. Make sense? Okay, so for the executive committee, the nomination for chair was Greg Meredith. Greg, would you accept that nomination? Unless there are any other nominations. I know he's doing a lot of stuff, but. Okay. Yeah, Greg, if you could pull up I think it's GitHub issue 110. Maybe. It should say something about the committees. I posted a description. It's a good one. I think it's 110, but yeah, RChain members. It'd be under issues or yes, issues. Yeah. Maybe, if I can remember. Oh, nope, 118. Yeah, further down there's descriptions. Yep, there it is. Okay, so executive committee, the role of this committee. Executive committee is to implement the board's fiduciary, strategic, and generative plans, policies, and decisions consistent with the cooperative's vision, mission, and guiding principles. It's pretty general. Or the proposed chair there was Evan. Okay. Oh, the seat. Yeah. Okay. Are you interested? Okay. 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 So you two decide, and then I will give you the names of the volunteers and coordinate with them. And if there are any members watching or here that want to participate, either talk to Greg or Ian. You can co-chair if you want to. All right, so we already got 2. All right, executive, that's done. Nominating committee, and this would be for identification and selection of participants for different things. So in the future, we'll use nominating committees to choose things as opposed to kind of what we're doing right now. I had the proposed chair for Greg, but I think that's probably, actually, I think maybe we'll substitute Evan for that. That'd be great. Yep. All right. Vlad. Okay, and then the last one, the compensation committee, would be the draft and negotiate the compensation packages for directors, officers, and other important roles in the cooperative. Compensation committee is solely responsible for the director's compensation. All other compensation packages are subject to board approval. So I put myself there. If there's any others, then okay, great. And I would ask that Lisa maybe volunteer for this, if she could, potentially, for the compensation committee. Yeah, to be on it. That would be helpful. So all the chairs will be coordinating with those who have filled out those forms. Those forms are still live. Those will be still live, and we'll get in contact about the deliverables needed, and the board will direct the committees as they see as for action items. Sure, yeah, I think, so Kevin I know, Jacob I know. Is there anybody else here that, I'm not sure if anybody else volunteered who was physically here. I think that's it, just those you two. Oh yeah, Jim did too. So between those, okay, and Brandon, right? Yeah, Brandon, and then Patrick, okay. So I think all those are the people that were on the list, okay? So if you want to, I'm going to meet with, I'm going to go back there with Lisa in the back for if anybody wants to talk about for the compensation committees, and the other committees can kind of break up as they see. But that is it for the formal agenda. So if there are not any other questions, thank you all for coming, and yeah, Ed. Yeah. See if there, you mean for questions or just in general? Okay, yeah, so we don't have much. So this will be on YouTube as well, so it'll be. Yeah. To the gallery, see how many people. Yeah, it's not a lot actually. Oh, there's some stuff in from the live chat from YouTube. Okay. Most of them are about, we can't hear anything about the microphone. The screen is blurred. So somebody did ask for notes. Yeah, it's mostly just that they either couldn't see or couldn't hear or something else. I didn't see anything, but yeah, thanks. All right, so if there's not anything else, then we'll conclude, and I thank you all for coming.